The electrical infrastructure in this country is hella old, and that's not great. The grid started in 1882 with Thomas Edison's Pearl Street Station. This was the world's first commercial power plant and earned New York City the nickname the city that never sleeps. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, companies started building out transmission lines, power plants, and hydroelectric dams across the country. Obviously, electricity is super exciting if you've never seen it before, and many municipalities were eager to join in. But it didn't hit everywhere all at the same time. It took a while for much of the country to catch up. For example, the American Southeast began electrification with the Tennessee Valley Authority and its many projects in the early 30s. My great grandfather would talk about his first time seeing electric candles the same day that they shipped him out to boot camp for World War II. Electrical demand tripled following the war, and by 1960, 97% of American farms and households were electrified. Electricity was no longer a luxury, it was a necessity, which is something that FDR predicted. The grid grew steadily and became more interconnected through much of the country up until about the 70s, when the energy production and build-outs dropped due to the oil crisis. Researchers began innovating in renewable resources such as wind and solar a lot more during this time. Even the White House had solar panels. I think Reagan removed them. Anyway, the grid expanded about 2% a year from the late 70s into the early 2000s. And that's about it. We haven't really changed much. 70% of our transmission lines are now over 25 years old. 60% of our circuit breakers are over 30. 70% of our transformers are over 25. The average age for dams is 60, with more than 8,000 dams in the United States over 90 years young. Much of the actual equipment for our grid was built immediately in the boom after World War II, and built with the expectations that it would be replaced in less than 75 years. These transmission lines are carrying 14 times the energy that they were in 1950. We're really hesitant as a country to swap out equipment or mess with something that most of us don't even think about on a daily basis. By 2050, the US is expected to see an 80% growth in demand for electricity, but the grid is highly vulnerable to outages caused by weather events, cyber attacks, and physical attacks when just its own age doesn't cause calamity by itself. Transmission lines are the backbone of our society and our economy, and a grid failure is incalculably bad for economies as well as residents. Texas has its own grid for some reason, and when they were hit with that bizarre storm a couple years ago, the entire state shut down. That had a huge economic impact. That freak hurricane that hit inland Appalachia, the same thing happened. The added hazard of dams overtopping. Heavy rains have caused over 30 dam failures or near failures just in the Midwest alone since 2018, and we don't even talk about it. Coast to coast, chat, we are cooked. The Department of Energy has warned that we could see 100 times the blackouts that we see now if we don't ramp up our energy production in the next 5 years. In less than a decade, we've already doubled those numbers from 3 hours a year to 7. Now they're saying that the average American could see over 800 hours without power a year on average. That's not great for businesses, people that rely on medical equipment, and just the way that we live our lives. Building out electrical infrastructure is not sexy. And until people started seeing actual consequences, it wasn't very well funded. We're retiring more gigawatts than we're building out at this point, and new projects are backlogged and construction costs have skyrocketed. Over the past few years, there have been bipartisan efforts to increase funding to modernization projects. Our elected officials have finally admitted that physical upgrades to the grid are unavoidable and pretty pertinent, and it only took a couple of millionaires' homes burning down for that to become evident. Replacing our aging infrastructure is estimated to cost up $10 billion a year, and the American Society for Civil Engineers will need about $1 trillion for dams, levees, and wastewater projects just by 2044. So how do we fix this? Unfortunately, there's no one good answer. I know everybody told their kids to go into programming, and we've eliminated all those jobs now, and now we're going to need 500,000 new electricians in the next decade. Some companies are making strides now that calamity has struck, such as California's PG&E. They've got a $15 billion loan from the Department of Energy to bury their transmission lines in forest fire-prone areas, expand their hydroelectric output, as well as upgrade their grid in other areas. Energy storage is a growth industry right now, with investments just at the distribution level increasing from $97 million in 22 to $723 million in 2023. So it's a start, but we are using way more energy than we used to, from heat pumps, electric vehicles, industrial electrification. Due to greenwashing, a lot of people think that just going electric is a more environmentally friendly option. And we have all of these damn data centers. So people are advocating for large-scale nationwide projects to expand out the grid and take advantage of our renewable resources more. Some people think that the better option is decentralized local energy sources, like one small efficient plant that can take care of an entire metro. Either way, we're developing new technology to make us more energy efficient at a lower cost to our environment. And like, I really don't care if you don't believe in climate change. You have to admit that spewing tons of heavy metals into the air, burning coal at your local power plant to charge your Tesla isn't really green. 56% of data centers get their energy from fossil fuels. Data centers can be built in 18 to 24 months, but it takes about 4 years for us to build a new transmission line. In 2018, the US had about 2,600 data centers, and this year it's more like 5,400, with a third of them in North Virginia and 56% of them using fossil fuels as their main source of energy. By 2030, electric rates are supposed to increase by 15 to 40% for just regular residents and may double by 2050, with commercial rates expected to rise by 75% in the same time frame. Your bill is probably going to increase, and they will probably pass off a lot of these changes to regular residents. Yeah, we need to modernize the grid, but we also need to take affordability into consideration. For many areas, the cost of actually delivering electricity is higher than the actual cost of electricity. While it seems like there's a plethora of renewable energy sources, we now require constant high capacity energy. Not everyone lives where the wind is regularly above 30 miles an hour or whatever the threshold is. And many of us live in regions where it's dark and rainy for a good portion of the year, so solar isn't the best option without batteries as a storage. And there's a big backlog for that kind of infrastructure as well. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a fortune teller with a crystal ball who can tell you where to put all your money. This is my research and my research only. Go get your own. Go look into this. Tell me what you find. Are you worried about our electrical infrastructure? Do you think it's investable? Let me know in the comments.